I never expected the weight of my father's legacy to settle on my shoulders. The day started like any other until the lawyer arrived, carrying the final words of a man who had spent his life building a kingdom and leaving a war zone behind. The air was thick with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and stale anticipation. We sat around the massive oak table in the dining room, each of us trying to look composed, but the tension crackled like a live wire. My older brother Jason was already smirking a predator, sensing an easy kill. My sister-in-law Claudia scrolled through her phone, barely masking her impatience. And my mother, poor sweet mother, her eyes flitted nervously from face to face, knowing that no amount of gentle smiles could fix the cracks in this family. I swallowed hard, feeling the knot of dread tighten in my gut. For years, I'd been the quiet one, the overlooked one, the girl who everyone thought would simply fade into the background, letting the real players take center stage. But today, I wasn't here to fade. I was here to watch, to listen, and maybe, just maybe, to take back what was mine. The lawyer, Mr. Grant, was a stoic man, with a face that revealed nothing. He wore a navy suit so crisp it seemed to slice through the heavy air. In his hand was a slim, leather-bound folder, my father's will. My father's final words, poised to rip open old wounds and expose truths we'd spent a lifetime ignoring. Before we begin, Mr. Grant said, his voice low and authoritative, I want to make it clear that this reading will be done in full. There will be no interruptions, no objections until it is complete. Jason snorted. Let's just get on with it. We all know what Dad wanted. His smirk widened as he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed like a conquering king. It's no secret. He always made sure we knew. I clenched my fists in my lap, my nails digging half-moons into my palms. Jason was right. Dad had always made sure everyone knew his favorites. Jason the firstborn, the golden boy, the heir to the family's empire. And me, I was the afterthought. The daughter he only acknowledged when he needed to prove he was a family man. But I knew something Jason didn't. I'd spent years in the shadows watching, listening, and I'd learned that the quiet ones always hear the most. Mr. Grant cleared his throat, snapping the room back to attention. As executor of your father's estate, I will now read his last will and testament. He opened the folder with a deliberate calm, as if he were defusing a bomb. The crackle of the leather echoed in the silence. I held my breath. He began to read. The words were formal, the tone almost clinical, but every sentence was a scalpel slicing through the polite smiles and fake laughter that had held this family together for so long. To my beloved wife Eleanor, I leave the family home and a trust fund to ensure she never wants for anything. My mother's eyes filled with tears. She reached for my hand under the table, her fingers cold and trembling. I squeezed back, offering silent comfort. To my son Jason, I leave the controlling shares of the family business, as was always planned. Jason grinned, leaning back further, like a cat stretching in the sun. I could practically hear his thoughts. Of course, as it should be. And to my daughter, Mr. Grant paused. His eyes flicked up, meeting mine for the briefest of moments. There was something there, a glimmer of warning. Or was it a promise? My heart pounded in my chest. And to my daughter, I leave the remainder of my estate along with a stipulation, one that must be honored in full for her to claim it. A hush fell over the room. Claudia lowered her phone. Even Jason sat up straighter, the smug smile faltering just a fraction. A stipulation, he echoed, his voice tight. Mr. Grant didn't answer. Instead, he set the folder down and reached into his briefcase. He pulled out a second, thicker folder, one I hadn't seen before. Its edges were worn as if it had been handled many times. He placed it carefully on the table. This, he said, his tone grave, contains the details of your father's final condition. It is not merely a formality, it is a directive, one he intended to be carried out, no matter the cost. My palms went slick with sweat. I felt everyone's eyes shift to me, their gazes heavy with suspicion and curiosity. I could feel the weight of their doubts pressing down, but I didn't flinch. I couldn't afford to. Mr. Grant placed a single sheet of paper on top of the folder. His hand hovered for a moment before he withdrew it, leaving the paper like a challenge. Once I read this, he said softly, "Nothing will ever be the same." I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the corner, each second an accusation. I swallowed, my throat dry as dust. Jason leaned forward, his jaw tight. "Read it," he ordered. "Let's see what game he's playing." Mr. Grant's eyes never left mine. He began to read. And in that moment, before a single word was spoken, I knew. My father's final move wasn't meant to protect the family. It was meant to expose it. The moment Mr. Grant began to read the stipulation, it was as if the air itself had turned to ice. My mother's hand tightened around mine, her nails digging into my skin. But I didn't pull away. I needed her grounding touch as much as she needed my quiet strength. In order for the daughter to claim her inheritance, Mr. Grant read, his voice calm but unyielding. She must present evidence that proves the betrayal that nearly destroyed this family. A collective gasp rippled around the table. Jason shot to his feet so quickly that his chair scraped across the polished floor with a screech. Betrayal. What the hell is he talking about? Mr. Grant didn't flinch. He set the paper down and folded his hands, his expression impassive. It seems your father believed there was a betrayal within this family that needed to be brought to light. He left it in your sister's hands to prove it. My brother's face turned red, his jaw working furiously. This is a joke. Dad would never. He did, Mr. Grant cut in smoothly. This document bears his signature, witnessed and notarized. It is legally binding. Claudia's eyes narrowed as she leaned forward, her voice dripping with false sweetness. And what kind of evidence is she supposed to have exactly? She's always been the little mouse in the corner, too afraid to speak up. My mother flinched at Claudia's tone, but I held her gaze. "You're right," I said softly, my voice steady, despite the storm brewing around me. "I've been quiet, I've watched, I've listened, and now, I have exactly what Dad wanted." Jason let out a harsh laugh. "This is insane. There's no betrayal. You're just making this up to steal what's mine." I could feel the old fear creeping up my spine, the same fear I'd known my whole life in this house. But I pushed it down, forced it back into the shadows where it belonged. I wouldn't let Jason's anger drown me out this time. Mr. Grant opened the thicker folder and began to lay out documents, letters, financial statements, a stack of photographs. My breath caught in my throat. Even I hadn't known the full extent of what Dad had left behind. "These," he said, his voice measured, "are the pieces your father gathered. He suspected wrongdoing, embezzlement, deceit actions taken against the family's interest. He trusted you, he looked directly at me, to finish what he started." Jason's mouth fell open. Claudia's eyes darted between the papers, like she was searching for an escape hatch. My mother let out a quiet sob, her face pale as milk. I forced myself to look at the papers to see the proof of the family's unraveling. There were bank statements with suspicious withdrawals, property transfers that made no sense, even letters written in my father's precise hand describing his fears and suspicions. He didn't trust any of us. Jason spat, his voice shaking with rage. "Why would he? We're his family." Mr. Grant regarded him coolly. "Perhaps he knew that family can cut deeper than any enemy." Claudia leaned back in her chair, her lips pressed into a thin line. "This is ridiculous. None of it means anything unless she can actually prove it. And even then, who's to say she didn't forge it all herself?" I met her stare head-on. "I didn't forge anything, and you know it." She flinched just a flicker, but enough for me to see the crack in her mask. "Mr. Grant continued, there will be a review period. Your father specified that the evidence must be presented in front of the family and verified. Until then, no one inherits anything. Not the business, not the house, nothing." Jason's face twisted with fury. "This is insane. He left the company to me." "That was always the plan. Plans change," I said quietly. "And it looks like Dad's plan was bigger than any of us ever knew." The room fell into a thick, suffocating silence. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock, each second a heartbeat echoing in the void. Finally, Jason slammed his hand on the table. "Fine. You want to play detective, go ahead. But you're going to regret this. Because if you can't prove anything, you'll end up with nothing." I didn't rise to the bait. I just watched him, my expression calm. For the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't the one under his thumb. Mr. Grant stood gathering the documents into a neat stack. "I will give you all 1 week," he said. 1 week to gather your thoughts, to decide how you wish to proceed. But be warned, your father's wishes are clear. If anyone interferes or tries to sabotage this process, they forfeit their share. Permanently. He let the words hang in the air, their finality ringing like a bell. Jason opened his mouth to argue, but Mr. Grant turned his back on him, his focus solely on me. "I'll be in touch to schedule the review. Until then, keep these safe." He handed me the thick folder, the weight of it both comforting and terrifying in my hands. As he left the room, I could feel every pair of eyes burning into me. Jason's fury, Claudia's cold calculation, my mother's quiet heartbreak. I felt all of it, but I didn't let it show. Because deep down, I knew this was my chance. My father had given me the key to unlock the truth, and for once the power was mine. I rose from the table slowly, the folder clutched to my chest. "I'm not afraid of the truth," I said, my voice low but firm. "Are you?" Jason's jaw tightened. Claudia looked away. My mother just whispered my name, her voice cracking. I turned and walked out of the room, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous hallway. With each step, I felt the weight of my family's secrets pressing down on me, but also something else. Something like hope. Because in that moment, I realized they thought they'd already won. They thought they'd broken me, pushed me so far into the shadows that I'd never find my way out. But they were wrong. I was done being quiet. I was done being overlooked. And as the lawyer's words echoed in my mind, I knew this was only the beginning. The heavy folder in my arms felt like a living thing, its weight pressing into my ribs with every heartbeat. I walked slowly down the hallway, each step echoing through the mansion's high ceilings like a promise. Or maybe a threat. Behind me, the dining room door slammed shut. I could practically hear Jason's fury simmering like a pot about to boil over, but I didn't turn back. Not this time. I made my way up the staircase, the worn carpet soft beneath my feet. My father's house, now my house, if I could prove what he wanted me to prove, loomed large around me, every painting and piece of antique furniture, a silent witness to the battle that had just begun. At the top of the stairs, I paused in front of the old oak door to my father's study. My hand hovered over the brass handle for a moment, my breath caught in my throat. He'd spent so many hours in here plotting, planning, hiding things. With a deep breath, I pushed the door open. The room was exactly as I remembered it. The faint smell of leather and old paper, the green glass lamp on the desk casting a warm golden glow. My father's favorite chair, worn but still imposing, sat behind the massive desk. And for a moment, I imagined him there, watching me with those sharp eyes of his. I closed the door behind me and sank into the chair. My hands trembled as I opened the folder, the rustle of paper loud in the quiet room. There it was. The evidence he'd left me. Pages and pages of transactions, letters, even handwritten notes in my father's precise scrawl. As I flipped through them, a picture began to form, a picture of betrayal that ran deeper than I'd ever guessed. One letter in particular caught my eye. It was dated just a month before he died. "My dearest, if you're reading this, then you already know the truth. Or at least part of it. What I built was meant to last for generations, but somewhere along the way, the people I trusted most began to chip away at it, at us. I know you've always felt like you were on the outside looking in, but you were the only one who saw clearly. You always listened when no one else did. That's why I trust you now to finish what I couldn't. There's more in the safe. Dad. The safe. My father's hidden vault. A place only he and I had ever known about, tucked behind a false panel in the study's fireplace. I pushed back from the desk, my pulse thundering. Crossing to the fireplace, I ran my fingers along the cold marble until they found the slight ridge that marked the panel. A gentle push, and it swung open with a soft click. Inside was a small safe, the keypad gleaming in the dim light. My fingers hovered over the numbers. My father's birthday. My birthday. My mother's. 1,000 combinations, but I only needed one. I closed my eyes and typed in the date he always said changed everything, the day he started the company. the day his empire was born. The safe clicked open, inside a single envelope, my name written on it in bold, careful letters. I slid it out with shaking hands and tore it open. Inside was a flash drive and a simple note: play it. Show them. I stared at the drive, my mind racing. What had he left on here? Proof of Jason's lies? Claudia's manipulations? Or something even worse? I crossed back to the desk and booted up the old computer, the familiar whir of the hard drive filling the room. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then I plugged in the drive and clicked play. The video flickered to life on the screen. My father sat in his study, the same chair I now occupied. He looked older than I remembered, his face lined with worry, but his eyes still sharp. "If you're watching this," he said, his voice calm and measured, "then you know what they've done." He paused, glancing down at the papers in front of him before looking back at the camera. "Jason has been siphoning money from the company for years. Claudia has been helping him using shell accounts and fake charities. They've been bleeding us dry, and they think I don't know." My breath caught in my chest. I knew Jason was greedy, but this was deliberate destruction. "They think they've won," my father continued, his lips curling into a faint, sad smile. "But they forgot one thing: I've always been 3 steps ahead. And so have you." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "This is your proof. Show it to the lawyer. Show it to anyone who dares to stand in your way. And remember, they will try to silence you. They will tell you that you don't belong, that you're weak, but you're stronger than any of them." The video ended. The screen went black. I sat there for a long moment, my hands trembling, my heart racing. My father's voice echoed in my mind, a final push from beyond the grave. A soft knock on the door jolted me back to the present. I turned to see my mother standing there, her face pale, and her hands twisting in the hem of her cardigan. I heard what the lawyer said," she whispered. "Is it true?" I rose from the chair and crossed the room to her. "It's true," I said, my voice steady. "Dad knew. He knew everything." Tears welled in her eyes. "Oh, my sweet girl, I'm so sorry." I took her hand and squeezed it. "It's not your fault, Mom. It's theirs." She nodded, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "What will you do now?" I looked back at the computer screen, the blackness of it like a door waiting to be opened. "I'm going to finish what he started," I said. "I'm going to show them the truth." She nodded again, her chin lifting. "Then I'll stand with you." In that moment, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just the quiet one. I wasn't the afterthought. I was the one holding the truth, and I wouldn't let it go. As my mother and I stood there together, I knew that the real battle was just beginning. But I wasn't afraid, because they thought they'd won, but they hadn't heard the lawyer speak yet, slamming his hand down on the table so hard the coffee cups rattled. I didn't flinch. "I'm not ruining anything, Jason. I'm just showing the truth." Claudia let out a sharp laugh, cold and cutting. "You think you're so righteous, don't you? You think Dad trusted you? He didn't. He was sick. He didn't know what he was doing." I met her eyes, unblinking. "Then why did he leave me this?" I slid the flash drive across the table, the one holding the video of my father's final confession. Claudia recoiled like it was a snake about to bite. Jason's eyes narrowed. "You think that's enough? A video, anyone could have faked that." I raised an eyebrow. "Including you." For a moment, his mask slipped, a flicker of fear flashing in his eyes. Then he straightened his lips, curling into a cruel smile. "You don't have the stomach for this. You never have. That's why you'll fail." "Maybe," I said softly, "but I'm not alone this time." My mother stepped up beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder. "She's not alone," she said quietly. "Not anymore." Jason looked at her like she'd slapped him. "You're siding with her after everything?" She swallowed hard. "I'm siding with the truth." For a moment, the room was so still, I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then Jason let out a low, humorless chuckle. "Fine. You want to play detective? Go ahead. But I promise you, once you start digging, you'll find more than you bargained for." He turned and stalked out, Claudia at his heels. The door slammed shut, the sound ringing through the house like a gunshot. I let out a shaky breath, my shoulders sagging. My mother squeezed my shoulder. He's afraid, she said softly. He should be. I nodded, but my heart pounded in my chest. Because she was right, Jason was afraid. But fear made him dangerous. I spent the rest of the morning combing through the documents, piecing together the web of lies my brother and Claudia had spun. Offshore accounts, shell companies, false charities. Every page was another piece of the puzzle, another crack in the perfect facade they'd built. And beneath it all, one name kept surfacing: Vincent Harper. Vincent had been Jason's closest advisor at the company, a man who always seemed to be everywhere and nowhere all at once. My father had trusted him once, until he didn't. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became. Vincent had been Jason's puppet master, helping him siphon money away and cover his tracks. And he was still out there pulling strings. I printed out every document, every email, every trace of Vincent's involvement. My father's voice echoed in my head. Show them. Finish what I couldn't. By afternoon, I had a stack of evidence a foot high. My mother sat across from me, her eyes tired but resolute. "What will you do with all of this?" she asked. "I'm going to the lawyer," I said. "Mr. Grant needs to see it all. And after that, I'm going to show everyone." She nodded, a small smile breaking through her worry. "Your father would be proud." I hoped she was right. I packed the documents into a leather briefcase and made my way to the lawyer's office. The drive was a blur, my mind focused on the task ahead. I didn't notice the cars behind me, the eyes watching me from the shadows. Mr. Grant's office was quiet and cool, the smell of old books and fresh ink comforting in its familiarity. He rose as I entered, his sharp eyes flicking to the briefcase in my hand. "I trust you've found what your father wanted you to see," he said. I nodded and set the briefcase on his desk. "It's all here. Every lie, every theft." He flipped through the papers, his expression unreadable. "This is substantial," he murmured. "More than enough to bring formal charges if you wish." "I don't care about charges," I said, my voice low. "I want the truth out. I want them to know they didn't win." He looked up at me, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Then we'll make sure they know." As I left his office, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city streets. I felt the weight of what I was doing settle around me like armor. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting, I was fighting back. But as I drove home, headlights flared in my rearview mirror. A black sedan, too close, too persistent. My heart thudded in my chest as I realized Jason wasn't done fighting either. I took a sharp turn, trying to lose them, but the car stayed with me, its presence a dark promise. My father's words echoed in my head. "They will try to silence you." I gripped the wheel tighter, my resolve hardening. Let them try. I wouldn't be silenced. As I turned down the final stretch of road to the mansion, the car behind me peeled away, disappearing into the night. But I knew this wasn't over. It was just beginning. Because they thought they'd won. But they hadn't heard the lawyer speak yet. When I got home, the air in the mansion felt thicker than ever, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. My mother met me at the door, her face pale and worried. "Did you get everything to Mr. Grant?" she asked in a hushed voice. I nodded. "He's going through it all. He said it's more than enough to bring them down." She let out a shaky breath and pulled me into a hug. For a moment, I let myself lean into her, feeling the comfort of her steady heartbeat. But I couldn't linger. I knew that every second counted now. I pulled back my eyes, scanning the hallway. "Where's Jason?" She swallowed her fingers, twisting in the hem of her sleeve. "He and Claudia left an hour ago. He said he had business to take care of." The tremor in her voice told me she didn't believe a word of it. "Did he say where he was going?" I pressed. She shook her head. "No, but—" He looked furious. "Be careful, sweetheart." I nodded, my jaw set. "I will." I made my way up the stairs to my room, my mind racing. Jason was on edge, cornered animals always were. He'd seen the evidence, heard the lawyer's words. He knew I had the truth in my hands. And if I knew Jason, he wasn't going to let that stand. I closed my bedroom door and locked it behind me, setting my phone to record just in case. I couldn't afford to take chances. The soft whir of the recording app was a small comfort as I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I needed to get ahead of him. I needed to show the world the truth before he had the chance to bury it. My fingers flew over the keyboard as I drafted an email to Mr. Grant, attaching scans of the most damning documents, the offshore transfers, the forged signatures, the charity fronts. I typed out a short message for your records, in case anything happens. I hesitated before hitting send, my pulse pounding. Then I pressed the key, watching as the message zipped off into cyberspace, a digital insurance policy. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. My father's voice echoed in my head. They will try to silence you. Don't let them. A soft knock at the door made me jump. My heart lurched into my throat. Who is it? I called, my voice trembling. It's me, my mother said softly. I unlocked the door, relief flooding me as she stepped inside carrying a tray of tea. I thought you could use this, she said with a small smile. I took the cup gratefully, the warmth seeping into my cold hands. Thank you, I said. She sat on the edge of my bed, her expression worried. I've never seen Jason like this, she murmured. He's always been forceful, but now he seems desperate. I nodded. He knows he's losing. She looked at me, her eyes searching. What if he tries to hurt you? I swallowed hard. Then I'll be ready. We sat in silence, the only sound the ticking of the old clock on my nightstand. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows. It felt like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. I finished my tea and set the cup down. I'm going to the company tomorrow, I said. I need to see the files for myself. There might be more, something we missed. She frowned. It's dangerous, sweetheart. I know, I said softly. But I can't stop now. That night, I barely slept. My dreams were a jumble of my father's voice, Jason's sneer, and the flicker of headlights in the darkness. When dawn finally broke, I was already dressed, the documents packed neatly in a folder under my arm. My mother pressed a kiss to my forehead as I left. Be careful, she whispered, and remember you're stronger than any of them. I stepped out into the cold morning light, my breath clouding in the air. The drive to the company headquarters was a blur, the city waking up around me as I focused on what lay ahead. The building was as imposing as ever, glass and steel rising into the sky, like a monument to my father's ambition. I walked through the revolving doors, my shoulders squared, ignoring the curious glances of the receptionist as I signed in. I took the elevator to the top floor, the folder clutched tight against my chest. My father's office now, Jason's was at the end of the hallway, the door closed. I could feel the weight of it, the finality. I paused outside the door, my heart thudding. Then I knocked. Come in, Jason's voice called. I pushed the door open. He sat behind the massive desk, Claudia perched on the edge, like a queen on her throne. Jason's eyes were cold as he watched me enter. Come to gloat, he asked, his voice dripping with contempt. I came to finish this, I said evenly. You know what I have, Jason. It's over. He let out a short laugh. You think you're in control. You think a few pieces of paper and a video will bring me down. Claudia leaned forward, her smile sharp as a blade. You have no idea how deep this goes, little mouse. You're playing with fire. Then let it burn, I said softly. Jason stood, his hands flat on the desk. You're not leaving here with those files, he said. I can promise you that. I met his gaze, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. Try and stop me. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Jason moved fast, and sudden his hand reaching for the folder in my arms. I twisted away the papers, slipping to the floor in a flurry of white. Jason lunged for them, but I kicked them out of reach, my pulse roaring in my ears. Claudia screamed, Jason, stop, but he didn't. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. This ends now, he hissed. I looked him in the eye, my own voice calm and clear. You're right. It does. Behind me, the door opened. Mr. Grant stood there, his eyes hard. Enough, he said. It's over, Jason. Jason froze, his grip loosening. I yanked free, stepping back, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Mr. Grant stepped into the room, his presence like a shield. I've seen the evidence. The board has seen it. Your father's final stipulations will be honored. And you, Jason, you're done. For the first time, I saw real fear in my brother's eyes. He looked at me, and I saw it all, the realization, the defeat, the knowledge that he'd lost. I straightened my shoulders, my father's voice echoing in my head. Show them. Finish what I couldn't. And I would. Jason's face twisted as Mr. Grant's words sank in his knuckles, white against the edge of the desk. You have no idea what you're doing, he growled, his voice low and dangerous. I know exactly what I'm doing, I said quietly. My eyes locked on his. I'm putting an end to your lies. Claudia shifted uneasily on the desk's edge, her eyes flicking between me and Jason. Jason, this isn't helping, she said, her voice tight. We need to shut up. Jason snapped, his control cracking. This is your fault, too. You said she wouldn't find anything. Claudia recoiled, her face paling. I didn't know how much your father had. He must have been watching us for years. I took a step forward, my breath steady. He was. And now everyone else will see it too. Mr. Grant laid a thick file on the desk, the sound of it hitting the wood like a gavel. This is just the beginning, he said, his tone even but his eyes hard. The board has seen enough to begin an investigation. The police will be involved. The charity fraud, the embezzlement, it all leads back to you. Jason sneered, but I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. You think the police will care? We have money, connections. Mr. Grant's smile was cold. Not enough to bury this. Claudia slid off the desk, her voice shaking. What do you want from us? She demanded, her carefully painted mask of calm slipping. Do you want money? Is that it? I let out a humorless laugh. You still don't get it, do you? I don't want your money. I want the truth. My father wanted the truth. Jason's lips peeled back in a snarl. You're nothing, little sister. Always have been, always will be. Then why are you so afraid of me? I asked softly. For a moment, the room was dead silent. Then Jason lunged. I barely had time to react before he was in front of me, his hands grabbing for the folder in Mr. Grant's hands. Papers flew everywhere, the white sheets like startled birds. I stumbled back as Jason's hand closed around my wrist, his grip bruising. You think you can ruin me? He spat, his face inches from mine. I've built this family, this empire. You're nothing but a shadow in my way. I'm the only one telling the truth, I said, my voice calm, despite the fear clawing at my throat. Suddenly, my mother was there, her small frame interposing between us. Let her go, Jason, she cried, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. He hesitated just for a moment, and that was enough. Mr. Grant stepped forward, his hand closing over Jason's wrist, pulling him away from me with surprising strength. You've done enough, he said evenly. The evidence will stand. Your threats mean nothing now. Jason jerked free, breathing hard, his face flushed with fury. This isn't over, he hissed. I straightened my shoulders, my hands trembling, but my voice steady. Yes, it is. He glared at me, then at Mr. Grant. You think you've won. You think you're better than me. His voice cracked on the last word, the fury in his eyes almost feral. Claudia moved to his side, her face pale. Jason, please. We can still fix this. We just need to be smart. He laughed, a harsh, broken sound. There's nothing left to fix. He turned and stalked out of the room, Claudia trailing after him. The door slammed shut behind them, the echo rattling through the silence they left in their wake. I let out a long breath. I didn't know I'd been holding my shoulders slumping. My mother's hand found mine, squeezing it tight. You were so brave, she whispered. Your father would be proud. Mr. Grant gathered the scattered papers, his expression calm and focused. This will be enough to begin formal proceedings, he said. The board has already called an emergency meeting. Jason's days of control are over. A shiver ran through me, half relief, half fear. Will it be enough to protect the company, I asked. To protect what Dad built, Mr. Grant met my eyes. It will. But there will be fallout. People like Jason don't go down quietly. I nodded, my jaw set. Then I'll be ready. He paused, his gaze softening. You're stronger than you think, he said quietly. Your father saw that in you. So do I. The words settled over me like a balm soothing the raw edges of my fear. I had spent my whole life feeling small in this house, in this family, but today, for the first time, I felt seen. I felt heard. I followed Mr. Grant and my mother out of the office, my mind racing with what came next. There would be police reports, statements to sign, more secrets to unearth. But I was ready, because the truth was stronger than any lie Jason could tell. We walked down the hallway in silence, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink outside the tall windows. The house felt different, somehow, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from its bones. At the front door, Mr. Grant turned to me. "I'll be in touch," he said. "Stay close to your mother tonight. And if you need anything, anything at all, call me." I nodded. "Thank you. For everything." He gave me a small smile and left his footsteps echoing across the marble floor. My mother and I watched him go, the silence between us comfortable for the first time in years. When the door closed, she turned to me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You did it," she whispered. I shook my head, a small smile playing on my lips. "No, Dad did it. I just finished what he started." She pulled me into a hug, and I let myself lean into her warmth, the final threads of fear unraveling in my chest. For the first time, I felt like I truly belonged here. As the night settled over the mansion, I knew the fight wasn't over. Jason wouldn't give up so easily, he never had. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. Because they thought they'd won. But they hadn't heard the lawyer speak yet. The night was thick with shadows as I sat in my father's old study, the glow of the desk lamp casting long fingers of light across the worn wood. The house was silent, but my mind was anything but. Every breath I took felt too loud, too sharp. I kept replaying the look in Jason's eyes as he'd left the wild glint of a man cornered. I knew he wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. My mother had gone to bed hours ago, exhausted by the day's battles. But sleep was impossible for me. Instead, I sat there poring over the files again, searching for anything I might have missed. The phone on the desk buzzed, jolting me out of my thoughts. I grabbed it, my fingers trembling. A message from an unknown number. "You think this is over? You have no idea what you're up against." I swallowed hard, the words twisting in my gut like a knife. Jason. It had to be. He was warning me or threatening me. I took a deep breath, forced my racing heart to slow. He was trying to rattle me, to make me second-guess myself. But I wouldn't let him. I typed back, "I'm not afraid of you." A moment later, another message. "You should be. Watch your back." I set the phone down carefully, my pulse pounding in my ears. The threat was clear, but so was my resolve. I wouldn't back down now. I couldn't. I rose from the chair, crossing the room to the old cabinet where my father had kept his personal journals. My fingers traced the worn leather spines, the smell of old paper grounding me. He'd always said the truth was in the details. And if there was more to this story, I'd find it here. I pulled out a thick journal, the pages yellowed with age. As I flipped through it, I felt like I could hear his voice in every word, a quiet strength that steadied me. Suddenly, a faint noise echoed from downstairs, a soft creak, like someone moving through the dark. My breath caught in my throat. I snapped the journal shut and crept to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. Another creak, closer this time. I grabbed the heavy flashlight from my father's desk drawer and slipped into the hallway, moving as silently as I could. My bare feet made no sound on the carpet, but my heart thundered with every step. Downstairs, the shadows seemed to shift and twist. I forced myself to keep moving one foot in front of the other until I reached the landing overlooking the foyer. In the dim glow of the moonlight through the tall windows, I saw him. Jason. He was standing by the front door, his back to me, his phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, urgent. "No, she doesn't know yet. But if she does, yes, I'll handle it. Don't worry." I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I didn't need to. The icy knot in my stomach told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't alone in this. He was still plotting, still fighting to keep his grip on the empire he'd stolen. As I watched, Claudia appeared in the doorway, her arms wrapped around herself. "Jason, this is getting out of control," she whispered. We should go somewhere safe. Jason turned to her, his face hard. If we run, we lose everything. Do you understand that? Everything. Claudia hesitated, her eyes flicking nervously around the room. But what if she goes to the police? He stepped closer to her, his hands on her shoulders. She won't. She's too soft. She always has been. I felt my hands tighten around the flashlight, the anger and fear swirling in my chest like a storm. He still thought I was weak. That was his mistake. Claudia's voice dropped even lower, barely audible. And what about Vincent? He's getting nervous. Vincent! The name sent a jolt of recognition through me. My father's journal had mentioned him again and again, a shadowy figure always at Jason's side. Jason's jaw tightened. Vincent won't talk. He knows what's at stake. Claudia swallowed. And if he does, then he'll regret it, Jason said coldly. I stepped back, my mind racing. Vincent was the key. If I could find him, if I could get him to talk, I could end this once and for all. I crept back up the stairs, my breath coming in shallow gasps. In my room, I locked the door and leaned against it, my heart hammering. I had to move fast before Jason realized how close I was. I grabbed my phone and called Mr. Grant. It rang twice before he answered, his voice calm despite the hour. What is it? Jason's not working alone, I said, my voice trembling but sure. He's talking to someone named Vincent. I heard him. Vincent's the one helping him cover everything up. Mr. Grant was silent for a moment. Then he said, I'll find him. But you need to be careful. If Jason thinks you're getting too close, I know, I said quietly. But I'm not stopping now. Good, he said, because you're the only one who can finish this. We hung up and I sat on the edge of my bed, my mind racing. My father's voice echoed in my head. You're stronger than you think. The next morning, I was already dressed when Mr. Grant called again. I found him, he said without preamble. Vincent Harper. He's been hiding in plain sight, still working with the company, but under a different name. My pulse quickened. Can you get him to talk? I can try, he said. But it would help if you were there. He'll be more likely to open up if he sees you're serious. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Tell me where. We met at a quiet coffee shop downtown, the kind of place where no one asked questions. Vincent was already there, sitting in a corner booth, his eyes flicking nervously to the door every few seconds. He looked older than I remembered, gray at the temples, his face lined with worry. But when he saw me walk in with Mr. Grant, his eyes went wide. You, he breathed. I didn't think. I sat down across from him, my voice calm. You know why I'm here? Vincent swallowed hard. I don't want any trouble. Then tell me the truth, I said. Tell me everything. He hesitated, glancing at Mr. Grant, then back at me. If I talk, he'll come for me. I leaned forward, my voice steady. And if you don't talk, he'll bury you with the rest of his secrets. My father trusted you once. Help me finish what he started. Vincent's shoulders slumped. Okay, he whispered. I'll tell you everything. As he began to speak, I felt the weight of the last few days lift just a little, because I knew this was the proof that would finally bring Jason down. They thought they'd won, but they hadn't heard the lawyer speak yet. Vincent's hands trembled as he took a long sip of coffee, his eyes darting around the cafe like a hunted animal. I watched him carefully, every flicker of fear in his gaze, only confirming what I already knew. Jason had his claws in him deep. I'm risking everything by talking to you, Vincent said in a low voice. You understand that, don't you? I leaned in, my own voice, calm but unyielding. And you're risking even more if you stay quiet. Jason won't protect you forever. If you help me now, I can make sure you're safe. He hesitated, glancing at Mr. Grant, who sat beside me, his presence a steady anchor. I didn't want any of this, Vincent murmured. At first it was just numbers, small transfers. I told myself it wasn't hurting anyone, but Jason, he kept pushing. And once I was in, I couldn't get out. My stomach twisted. Tell me everything. I need to know exactly how deep it goes. Vincent wiped a hand across his mouth, his voice dropping to a whisper. He used me to funnel money out of the company, millions. Shell companies, fake charities, everything. Claudia was in on it too. But Jason, he was the mastermind. My breath caught. I'd known it was bad, but hearing it out loud made it real in a way that documents never could. He threatened me. Vincent continued, his voice shaking. He said if I ever talked, he'd ruin me. My family, my reputation, everything. Mr. Grant leaned forward, his tone gentle but firm. Vincent, the only way to protect yourself now is to cooperate fully. If you don't, Jason will make sure you're the one who takes the fall. Vincent looked at me, his eyes haunted. You don't know what he's capable of. He's not the man you think he is. I met his gaze evenly. I know exactly what he is, and I'm going to stop him. He swallowed hard. Okay, he whispered. I'll give you everything I have. Emails, bank statements, recordings, whatever it takes. Mr. Grant nodded. Good. We'll set up a secure location for you to turn over the evidence, and you'll be under protection until this is over. Vincent let out a shaky breath, as if the decision alone had lifted a weight off his shoulders. Thank you, he murmured. I never wanted it to come to this. I reached across the table, my hand brushing his. You're doing the right thing now. That's what matters. As we left the cafe, the winter wind cut through my coat, but I felt something like relief for the first time in days. We had the final piece. The truth. And with Vincent's testimony, there was no way Jason could spin his lies any longer. But even as we drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching us, the shadows deeper than they should have been. Jason wouldn't let this go without a fight. That evening, back at the mansion, I paced the study, the documents spread out before me. My mother watched from the doorway, worry etched into her face. Will it be enough? She asked softly. I nodded, though my voice felt hollow. It has to be. She stepped forward, resting a hand on my shoulder. Your father would be so proud of you. I closed my eyes, letting the words wash over me. I hope so, I whispered. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Mr. Grant. I have Vincent's statement, he said. I'm heading to the board meeting now. This ends tonight. I let out a long breath. Thank you, Mr. Grant. He paused. You need to be careful, especially now. Jason won't go quietly. I know, I said. I'll be ready. As I hung up, the grandfather clock in the corner chimed, the sound echoing through the quiet house like a warning. I gathered the documents, tucking them into a folder, and made my way downstairs. My mother waited at the bottom, her expression calm but determined. We're with you, she said simply. I nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle in my chest. Thank you. We drove to the board meeting together, the car silent except for the hum of the engine. The city lights blurred past us, but my focus was razor sharp. Jason's lies had been the foundation of this family for too long. It was time to tear them down. When we arrived, the conference room was already full, men and women in suits, their faces grave. Jason stood at the head of the table, his posture stiff, his eyes cold as ice. Claudia sat beside him, her smile brittle. Mr. Grant entered behind us, carrying Vincent's statement like a loaded weapon. Jason's eyes flicked to me as I entered, a sneer curling his lips. Come to watch me destroy you, he drawled. I met his gaze without flinching. No, I came to watch you destroy yourself. The room fell silent as Mr. Grant began to speak. He laid out Vincent's testimony, each word a nail in the coffin Jason had built for himself. The board members shifted uncomfortably, their expressions darkening as the truth spilled out. Jason tried to interrupt, his voice rising in desperation. This is a lie, she's making this up to steal everything. But Mr. Grant cut him off, his voice calm and final. The documents are verified. The recordings are clear. This is your doing, Jason, and everyone in this room knows it. Claudia's face went pale, her hands trembling. Jason, you said we were safe. Jason's mask slipped, fury twisting his features. Shut up, Claudia! The room erupted in whispers and shocked gasps. I stood there, my hands clenched at my sides, feeling the tide turning. One of the board members, a gray-haired man who had always looked at me with quiet disdain, rose to his feet. Jason, he said slowly, your actions have endangered this company, this family. We trusted you, and you've betrayed us all. Jason's face turned white, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. No, you can't. But the man just shook his head. It's over. I took a step forward, my voice steady. You thought you could break me, that I'd stay silent. But you were wrong. I'm done hiding in the shadows. Jason's eyes locked on mine, hatred and fear warring in his gaze. But I didn't look away. Because they thought they'd won. But they hadn't heard the lawyer speak yet. The silence after the board's declaration was deafening. Jason's face had gone completely white, a bead of sweat tracing down his temple. Claudia had slumped in her chair, her gaze vacant, as if all her carefully spun illusions had finally unraveled. I stood there, my heart pounding so loud, it drowned out everything else. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one in the corner invisible. I wasn't the girl too timid to speak. I was the one holding the truth, and they all knew it. Mr. Grant cleared his throat, his calm voice slicing through the stunned silence. Effective immediately, Jason Miller is removed as CEO. The company's assets will be frozen pending further investigation. The board will appoint an interim leader while we sort through the mess he's created. Jason staggered back a step, his hands gripping the table edge. You can't do this, he rasped, his voice raw. This is my company, my family's company. The older board member, who had spoken before Mr. Hargrove, looked at him coldly. It was your father's company. You've turned it into a playground for your greed. We're done letting you ruin his legacy. Jason's eyes flicked to me, his mouth twisting into a snarl. This is your doing, he spat. You think you've won. You're nothing but a say. I held his gaze steady, my voice calm and clear. No, Jason. You're the one who thought you'd won. But you didn't count on the one person you always overlooked. Claudia finally found her voice, though it was barely a whisper. Jason, what do we do now? He didn't answer. His eyes darted around the room, wild and desperate. For the first time, I saw the realization that he'd lost everything, that his kingdom of lies had crumbled around him. Mr. Grant stepped forward, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. The police will be here shortly, he said quietly. Vincent's testimony and the documents you provided are more than enough to press charges. Jason's head snapped up, his mouth opening in a silent scream. No, this isn't happening. He lunged for me, his hands reaching out as if he could claw back everything he'd lost. But Mr. Grant stepped between us, his calm composure like a wall. Enough, he said firmly. Jason froze his chest, heaving his eyes wild. This isn't over, he whispered. I'll find a way, I swear. But the doors to the boardroom swung open, and two uniformed officers stepped inside. Their presence was a final, undeniable punctuation mark on the end of Jason's reign. Mr. Jason Miller, one of them said, his voice measured. You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. You have the right to remain silent. Jason's face went slack with shock as the words washed over him. Claudia reached for his hand, but he yanked it away, his face a mask of fury and betrayal. The officers stepped forward, and in that moment, Jason seemed to collapse in on himself. His shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of him all at once. They read him his rights as they cuffed his hands behind his back, the metallic click echoing in the quiet room. Claudia rose shakily to her feet, her face pale as chalk. I didn't know it would go this far, she said, her voice hollow. I didn't know. I looked at her, my expression unreadable. You chose to help him. Now you have to face what comes next. She flinched, as if I'd slapped her. I thought I was protecting us, she whispered. I thought you were above consequences, I said softly. But you're not. The officers led Jason out of the room, his head bowed, his eyes darting around like a cornered animal. Claudia followed behind her shoulders, hunched, her perfect composure shattered. When the doors closed behind them, the silence that settled was almost deafening. The board members shifted uneasily in their seats, the weight of what had just happened settling over them like a storm cloud. Mr. Hargrove cleared his throat, his voice measured. Miss Miller, you've done something remarkable here. Your father would be proud. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Thank you, I said quietly. He believed in doing what was right. I just followed his example. He nodded, a rare smile flickering across his stern face. The company will recover. Because of you. I let out a shaky breath, the adrenaline that had been driving me for days finally starting to ebb. There's still a lot of work to do, I said. But I won't let his legacy be destroyed. Mr. Grant placed a hand on my shoulder, his touch steady. And you won't be alone. We'll rebuild this. Together. I nodded, the weight of those words settling over me like a promise. I wasn't alone, not anymore. As the boardroom slowly emptied, I stood by the tall windows, watching the city lights flicker below. My mother came to stand beside me, her hand slipping into mine. You were incredible today, she said softly. Your father would have been so proud. I leaned my head against her shoulder, the tightness in my chest finally starting to loosen. I wanted to honor him, to show them that his trust in me wasn't misplaced. She squeezed my hand. You did. You showed them all. We stood there in silence, the night stretching out before us like a blank canvas. For the first time, I felt like the shadows were lifting, like the future was finally mine to shape, because they thought they'd won. But they hadn't heard the lawyer speak yet. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on me as I stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker far below. My mother's hand in mine was the only thing that kept me grounded in that moment, as if without her, I might simply drift away. You've done what your father couldn't, she said softly. You finished what he started. I swallowed, my throat tight. I just did what needed to be done. She smiled faintly, though her eyes were bright with unshed tears. That's what he always hoped for you, to be braver than he was. For a long moment, we simply stood there in silence. Then Mr. Grant appeared at my shoulder, his expression grave. The police have taken Jason in for questioning, he said. Claudia's cooperating, at least for now. She's terrified she'll say whatever she has to in order to save herself. I nodded slowly, the implications of his words settling over me. So it's not over yet. No, Mr. Grant agreed. But you've done the hard part. You've brought the truth out of the shadows. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Thank you, I said. For everything. He gave me a small smile. You're stronger than you think you know. I managed a wry smile. My father always said that. I guess I finally believe it. He patted my shoulder once, then stepped away to speak with the remaining board members. My mother squeezed my hand before slipping out of the room, leaving me alone with the echoes of everything we'd just survived. I sank into the nearest chair, exhaustion washing over me. But even as my body begged for rest, my mind wouldn't stop turning. There were still loose ends, still pieces of the puzzle I hadn't found. My phone buzzed the screen, lighting up with a single word, Vincent. I answered immediately, my voice hushed. Vincent, are you okay? His voice was rough, as if he'd been speaking too much or too little for too long. I'm okay. But I think you should know Jason's not done. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean he was making calls before they took him? To someone named Nolan. I don't know the details, but it sounded like a last resort, like he'd rather burn everything down than let you have it. My mouth went dry. Nolan. Who is he? I don't know exactly, Vincent said. But he's dangerous. And if Jason's desperate enough to call him in? I didn't need him to finish the thought. My father's voice echoed in my mind. They will try to silence you. Don't let them. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. Stay safe, Vincent. I will, he said. And I'm sorry. For everything. The call ended, and I sat there for a moment, staring at the phone in my hand. Jason's reach was longer than I'd ever imagined. Even behind bars, he still had power, still had allies willing to do his dirty work. I rose from the chair, my exhaustion replaced by a cold determination. I wouldn't let him win. Not now. Not ever. The next morning dawned cold and gray, the sky heavy with snow clouds. I dressed in silence, my movements calm and deliberate. My mother watched me from the doorway, her expression worried. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "You don't have to face him again." "I do," I said. "I need to know exactly how far he's willing to go." She nodded, though I could see the fear in her eyes. "Then be careful," she whispered. At the police station, Jason sat in a small interrogation room, his hands cuffed in front of him. He looked up as I entered, his eyes glittering with something I couldn't name, hatred, defiance, maybe even respect. "You're brave," he said softly. "I'll give you that." I sat across from him, folding my hands on the table. "This is over, Jason. No more games." He let out a low laugh. "You think you've won. You think you're safe now. But you don't know the half of it." "I know enough," I said calmly. "I know what you did. And so does everyone else." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Do you really think the board will stand by you when the real threats come knocking? When Nolan shows up and starts asking questions?" My stomach twisted, but I didn't let it show. "Who is he, Jason? What did you promise him?" Jason's smile was a slow, cruel thing. "I promised him what he wants, most chaos. And you, little sister, you're the spark." My heart pounded in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" he murmured. "You've always been so sure you could outsmart me. But you're still playing my game even now." I stood slowly, my hands steady, even as my pulse roared in my ears. "Your game is over, Jason. And so is your power." He watched me go, his smile never fading. "We'll see," he called after me. "We'll see how strong you really are." Outside the room, Mr. Grant was waiting, his expression grave. "What did he say?" he asked. "He's still trying to scare me," I said. "But I'm done listening to his threats." Mr. Grant nodded. "Good. Because the board has just confirmed you're the new interim CEO. They trust you to guide the company through this mess." I blinked, stunned. "Me?" He said with a smile. "You earned it." I took a deep breath, the weight of it settling over me like a cloak. It was terrifying, but it also felt right. As we left the station, the snow began to fall in soft, silent flakes, covering the city in a fresh, clean blanket. A new beginning. I turned to Mr. Grant, my resolve clear. "Jason thought he'd broken me, but he only made me stronger." He nodded. "And now it's your turn to speak." I looked up at the falling snow, feeling the cold kiss of it on my cheeks. My father's voice echoed in my heart, "Show them. Finish what I couldn't." Because they thought they'd won. But they hadn't heard the lawyer speak yet. The snow had turned the city into a quiet white canvas, but beneath the peaceful cover, I could feel the danger gathering like a storm. Nolan Jason's last card was coming, and I had no illusions about what he would do to protect Jason's secrets. Back at the mansion, I stood in my father's study, the flickering fire casting long shadows across the old wood paneling. My mother hovered at the doorway, her worry plain. "You don't have to face this alone," she said softly. I looked at her, my voice calm but resolute. "I know, but I'm not the same girl who used to hide in the corners. If Nolan wants to play, I'll show him I'm not afraid." Mr. Grant arrived a few minutes later, his expression grave. "I've spoken to the authorities," he said. "They're ready to move if Nolan makes a move against you. But we have to be smart. This is the final push." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle into my bones. "Let him come," I said. "We have everything we need to end this for good." As night fell, the knock came at the front door, soft but deliberate, like the tap of a predator's paw. I opened it to find Nolan standing there, a tall man with eyes like shards of ice and a smile that didn't reach them. "We should talk," he said, his voice low and calm. I stepped aside, letting him in. "Then talk." He stepped into the warm glow of the entryway, his coat dusted with snow. "Jason told me you were stubborn," he said softly. I see he was right. I held his gaze. "I'm not stubborn. I'm done being afraid." His smile widened just a little. "You think this is about fear? It's not. It's about power. Jason was sloppy, but he knew one thing. Fear doesn't matter if you have enough leverage. I folded my arms, the folder of final documents clutched tight against my side. You're not going to find any here. The lies end tonight. He raised an eyebrow, his expression amused. You think you've won because Jason's in a cell. You haven't won anything yet. I've won the truth, I said quietly. And the truth doesn't die in the dark. For a moment, Nolan said nothing. Then he shrugged. Very well, he murmured. But remember, truth without protection is just a story waiting to be buried. I stepped closer, my voice low but firm. Then let it be buried in his grave, not mine. His eyes glittered, and for a moment I saw it the respect. He knew I wasn't the girl he expected. Very well, he said again. Then this is your story now. He turned and left without another word, the snow swirling around him as he disappeared into the night. The next morning, the sun rose over a city blanketed in fresh snow, the sky washed in pale gold. I stood at the tall windows of the mansion, feeling the warmth of the light on my face and the weight of the past finally slipping from my shoulders. Mr. Grant joined me, his expression calm. It's done, he said. Jason's trial will begin soon. Claudia has agreed to testify against him. Nolan, he's gone underground, but he won't come back. You've ended his hold. I nodded slowly, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. Thank you, I said, for standing by me. He gave me a small smile. Your father would have been proud, and so am I. My mother came up beside me, slipping her hand into mine. You're free now, she said, her voice soft and sure. You've given us back our future. I squeezed her hand, my heart full. I didn't do it alone, I said. This was always bigger than just me. We stood together, the three of us, as the city woke to a new day. And in that moment, I knew the fight was worth every breath. I took one last look at the mansion, the home that had held so many secrets, and felt something inside me settle into place. My father's voice echoed in my memory, steady and proud, show them. Finish what I couldn't. I had, and I would keep showing them every day, because they thought they'd won, but they hadn't heard the lawyer speak yet.